welcome to this workshop on automating OWASP ZAP. My name is Simon Bennett. I'm the ZAP project lead and I work for the Mozilla Cloud Security team. I'm going to go through these first slides very quickly because I've already explained them to the audience here. For this particular workshop, I'm going to talk about who this is for, problems we're trying to solve, what you can get out of this particular workshop, quick introduction to ZAP, a place where you can start, and then I'm going to go into more details about doing some full scans. This is for everyone who could be involved in automation. I've now got a better idea of the makeup of the audience. We've got a good mix of everyone here. So we're trying to find security issues as early as possible, but we don't want to do those completely outside of the development, the new DevOps pipeline. We want developers to be involved as much as possible. And we're not trying to find all possible vulnerabilities. Automated scanning isn't good for that. Automated scanning will find certain types of vulnerabilities very well, and others either it won't find or it's not so good at. So all it means for pen testers is hopefully they get to look for the more fun stuff and don't have to worry about the boring stuff as much. So after this workshop, you will get a quick way to quickly evaluate your applications. And then I'll go into go through what you can do for more thorough scanning. I will give you an introduction to Zap API. I will be demoing stuff. Now, it's only 1 hour, so it's not really that, I don't really have enough time to let you kind of play around with loads of things, but you can try things out, and you can obviously, hopefully, the slides in this video will be made public, so you can try them again when you're back home. So, yeah, you now know what it's about. If you're not looking for this, then you can go and find something which is more interesting to you. So, some of you haven't used Zap before, so I'm going to go through a quick introduction. It is a tool for finding vulnerabilities in web applications. Say easy to use. There are some caveats. We try to make it as easy to use as possible, but web security scanning is kind of complicated and it's often very unintuitive. But ease of use is something we try hard to achieve. That's particularly true of the UI. Obviously, once you get into the Zap API, it's a bit more difficult, and we haven't really documented that as well as we could have done. But most importantly, very important thing, is Zap is completely free, and it's open source. And it will stay that way, so we're not going to go pro. It is an OWASP flagship project, so the flagship projects in OWASP are the ones that are considered the most mature and most suitable for people to adopt. It is ideal for beginners. My background as a developer, I actually started Zap as a way to teach myself about security, and it's still a very important focus to us. But we're also, Zap is used by professional pen testers a lot as well. So we're trying to cover the whole spectrum, which makes it interesting. And it is ideal for developers, especially for automated security testing. And actually, that's one of my focuses when I started work on Zap, and that's one of my real focuses at Mozilla. It is included in all the major security distributions like Kali, and there's a site called toolswatch.org which tracks security tools, and we've been voted the tops open source free security tool several years, the past few years. But there are no silver bullets in this industry, and therefore Zap isn't one of them. Some features. So Zap has a swing-based UI, which I'm now calling desktop mode. And this is where it started off. So it was a fork of a project called Paros. So you have a swing-based UI. It's designed to be a kind of single-user interactive tool. We have a comprehensive REST API, REST-ish API. So we have a daemon mode now, so you don't have to run the UI. We have a plugin architecture. So we have what we call add-ons. This is good because it means we can extend Zap in different ways. We have an online marketplace, so we can have add-ons that we think are kind of quite specialized, and we don't have to include those from the standard install, but then people can download them, and it's called a marketplace, but everything's free on there. So the add-ons, we have different qualities of them. Every add-on starts at alpha quality because it's new. Then it doesn't matter if it's written by myself or one of the other Zap core team. It starts off as alpha. And then once it goes through various gates, and we're happy, it goes to beta and then release quality. The release version of Zap will only include release and some beta quality add-ons, but those are usually pretty stable ones. So we have a couple of spiders. So we have a traditional spider, which it's basically a crawler, so goes through the web pages and looks for all the links and follow those. That's very effective for certain types of web applications, and it's very fast. Unfortunately, for the JavaScript apps that makes heavy use of JavaScript, it's not very effective. Therefore, we have an Ajax spider, and that launches browsers using Selenium and clicks on all the links. That's much more effective, but it takes longer. We have passive and active scanning. So passive scanning is where we just look at the requests and responses that go through Zap, and based on that, we can identify certain security vulnerabilities or potential issues. We also have active scanning, and that does the nasty stuff. That does the attacking and trying to find the more interesting things. Should be noted that passive scanning is completely safe and legal, so you can do passive scanning on any site you like, and we might do that in a bit. It is highly configurable. We know that with the security tool there is no one-size-fits-all, so we try and make it as configurable as possible, which is at odds with trying to make it easy to use. We understand that. So we have things like scan policies where you can actually have very fine-grained control over exactly what types of things you're looking for in both the passive and active scans. Please.
By you emphasising that passive is nice and legal, does that
Yeah.
imply that active must be used with caution and only if your site owners have given permission?
Yeah. I can repeat that. The question was whether passive scanning is, if it's safe, does that mean active scanning is not safe? And that is absolutely correct. So passive scanning, all you're doing is, Zap is acting as a proxy, but typically between your browser and the application. We can just look at what's going on and give you some warnings. Active scanning, we're actually attacking the site in question, so you should not do that unless you have unless it's your own application or you have permission to do it. So yeah, thank you. And one thing, Zap is highly scriptable. So we have a scripting interface. Sorry, question in the back.
About the scan policies, can you edit them in the level that choose specific payloads?
No, we don't go down to that level because if Zap scans, they all work. The active scans always work in different ways. They're actually finely tuned for whatever they're looking for. So it's not a case of you have a set of payloads and you go, what's the result? It's more complicated than that. So for example, cross-site scripting, the original Paros one did just chuck what looked like a set of bad requests and try to match up the responses. We don't do that anymore. What we do is we inject something, a safe value in, we see where it occurs, where it's reflected in the page, and then we target our attacks to those contexts within the web page, and we try and work out whether we've broken out of the context or not, so we can actually control, so we can get JavaScript to run. So if you'd have to actually really go in and edit the source. It wouldn't be simple to just say, yes, this will.
Can you exclude specific parameters on the application?
Yes, yeah. So that's where we have a lot more flexibility in what you can say, what you want to attack. So we've got a fine-grained control over that. And as I was saying, Zap is highly scriptable. So we actually have lots of different things where we can plug in. So you can actually write active scan rules as scripts, and we try and make it where you can run scripts within Zap, and you have full control over all the functionality and data available within Zap. We're open source, so it means you can do whatever you like. So there are different ways of using Zap. One of them, we have an option to use Zap as a point-and-shoot tool, which is all very well. It works, but it's not the most interesting thing you can do with it. A more standard way is proxying your browser through Zap, and as you explore the application, you help Zap understand it, and then you can use scanning from that. Then we've got manual pen testing. We've got manual tools within Zap. So there's certain vulnerabilities, as I said, we can automate the finding of, but a lot of them, it's much more interesting where the pen tester is actually playing around and trying to deduce manually themselves whether there are problems or not. And then the important one for this talk is automated security regression tests, which is I'll be going into more detail. I used to use Zap as a debugger quite a lot. You've got some JavaScript library and you're interacting with a website and you're not sure what's going. There's made a mistake or something. You can use Zap to intercept things and change things on the fly just to get something functionally working, which is quite a fun thing to do. And you can use it as part of a large security program. There are a lot of other tools which use Zap because we try and make it as easy as possible to embed Zap into usable by any other tool. Getting on to how to install Zap, we have quite a few options. We have installers for Windows, Mac, and tar.zip for Linux. I said it's included by distros like Kali, but the one I want to stress here or make particular note of is the Docker images. I think for automation, Docker is great. I'm a big fan of it. So we have two different Docker images. We have the stable version, which is the most recent official version of Zap, which is currently 2.50. We also have weekly. We do a weekly release, which is a targ.zip, which, no, actually I think it's a zip file, which is cross-platform, but you just have to uninstall it, no installers there. But we also have that as a Docker image. Now, despite the names, the weekly image is actually quite stable. So we use the weekly image in our automation in Mozilla. And we do that for two reasons. One, it means I can kind of iterate through changes much more quickly. I don't have to wait for a full release. And the other one is the scripts in Mozilla run like 1 o'clock in the morning every morning. So if something goes horribly wrong, I'm one of the first people to know. And I think there's been if there's a serious problem with a weekly release, then we will fix it and re-release it. And I think this happened twice in the last 2 years. So the weekly release is pretty stable. So I wouldn't have a problem with you using that. So what I'll do is give you a place to start. And this is particularly for people who haven't got any security scanning, automated scanning at the moment. It's something called the baseline scan. And this is safe. And it runs quickly, and by that I mean within a couple of minutes. And that means you can integrate it in your continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. Whether it might not be one you want to do on every commit, but you can certainly do it when you're promoting application status staging or live. And it is very easy to get started. So I've got a couple of. Can you read those? Docker pull and Docker run. That's it. So it's very quick to do, but it's also very configurable if necessary. It uses Docker. That's the only dependency, so you don't have to install anything else. And what it does is a time-limited spider of the target. By that I mean it does the standard crawler by default for just 1 minute. And we do that so we know it won't find everything for large sites, but it just gives you kind of representative sample, hopefully. And all we do is passive scanning, so it means it's not going to break anything, and it'll work quickly, which is what we want. By default, it will warn on all issues, but you can change that to ignore particular issues, report them as info or fail. But I said it's very configurable, and you can include any Zap command line option. There's some later which I can show you. And you can also ignore particular URLs via regexes as well. It includes all of the release and beta passive scan rules, so it will find missing or incorrect security headers, problems with cookies, information disclosure, missing CSRF tokens, things like that. We can optionally include alpha passive scan rules. And this is where I start showing you things. So this is a Windows box, and I've got Docker installed. So what I'm going to do is, rather than actually type things, I've got a load of things I'm going to paste in. Can you read that? Is that big enough? Some nods around, great. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a Docker run. Now the -v, you don't normally need to specify, but that's a kind of, this is a Docker thing, so I can attach the current working directory to the Docker image so it can read and write to it. I'm doing that because I'm specifying a -g parameter budget.conf, which I'll explain in a minute. So all you really need to do is Docker run OWASP Docker Zap to Docker weekly, Zap baseline.py, so that's the baseline scan, and a -t is the target. And what I've actually got is I've got the budget store, which is that one there, and I'm running that via in a Docker container, which you won't be able to read that. So I've got a -d parameter, which is debug, and a -g, which is generating a configuration file. So kick that off, and because it's debug, you can actually see it's using the latest weekly release, and we're spidering the budget application now, and there we go. So what it tells you is that it's found a total of 60 URLs, and here are all the rules that are passed, and we're warning on everything else. So what I've done is I've used the -g parameters to generate a configuration file. So I'm going to vi budget.conf and then check I change the right ones. So It's always different when people are staring at you. There we go. So I'm going to change the absence of CSRF tokens to fail, and we'll change one of the other ones, or something else. Good one. Loosely scoped cookie. Thank you. Yep. And I'm going to change that to nor. And then I'm going to run the same thing again, except instead of -G, I'm going to use -C to say use that configuration file. You can also use -U if it's a URL, if you want to have a set of these configuration files on a server somewhere. And so it's going through again. And so if you want to try this out, you can try it on, I'm not on the network because things are going to go horribly wrong if I do that. But if you want to try it out against Google or Amazon, feel free, you can blame me. And what we'll see here is we've actually got one fail, and you can see that it's ignored one of them. And that's actually, it should normally have given a better summary than that. Is that? There it seems to be some problems with the display on Windows. So the last line should be kind of fail, warn, info, ignore. But it seems to have kind of messed that up. On Linux, it works fine. But of course, it's a demo, so things are going to go wrong. But that basically shows you that you can run this very quickly, and you can change it to pass and fail exactly what you want. So have a look through, run this against your applications. You just need a one line, and then you can see, right, well, these particular things we don't care about, so mark them as ignore, and these other things we really care about and fail. If it all passes, you get a 0 back. If it warns, I think warn is 1 and fail is 2, something else like that, but you can tell the difference. So you can, what we do within Mozilla is we have Jenkins, and when we get sites promoted from development to stage, this runs, and therefore we can see whether all of the mandatory controls that we're specifying, whether they're in place. At the moment, we're just warning the developers, we're not failing the deployment, but at some point we'll switch over to fail it. What I've done, I've got some slides here which show the usage in case the demos didn't work for whatever reason. I'm not going to go through all of these options. This is actually on the weekly release rather than the stable one, so there are more options here because I've been adding them. But there is a -Z Zap option, so you can specify any Zap command line options, which is kind of useful. And there's the output, which you've already seen with it kind of looks a bit better on there. And what you can do is you can, I've got an example here of running in Circle CI, which you can have a look at when you get the slides later. And that's a configuration file that I showed you. So that's the baseline scan. So it's nice and simple, and it gives you that very quick kind of finger in the air feeling about the application, and see where you've got certain mandatory things in place. It is not a complete scan. It is, you're limited to 1 minute, which you can increase, and you can use the Ajax spider as well if your site needs that. But it's not saying that your site has no vulnerabilities, but it's saying it passes that kind of mandatory simple baseline. So where can you go from there? We've got something we're calling the mass baseline scan. And what this does, it kind of wraps around the baseline scan, and it provides a simple dashboard, shows you the detailed results, and shows the per service history. And what we have is everything's on GitHub, so we have a ZA proxy organization, and we have something called community scripts. So this is where anyone can contribute scripts. Now, they used to be just the ones that ran within Zap, but we've now got an API section, so these are ones driving the Zap API. And we've just added the mass baseline directory, and what happens is these scripts will allow you to run the baseline against a whole set of your services, and then it'll actually create a set of markdown files which you can push into your private Docker repo. And that's actually what we do at Mozilla. So we have a summary, this summary is on the community scripts repo, so just go to the wiki and you'll find it. And we have a dashboard like this in Mozilla, and we've got over 70 sites on there, and you can see you get the kind of the red status for the green and orange for fail, pass, and warn. And if you click on the history, you can see the number of vulnerabilities, and you click on the status, you actually get that output so you can see exactly which ones failed. So that's the mass baseline scan. So that's gives you a couple of things you can do very quickly. You don't have to have any great technical knowledge about that. And things with passive scan is that we actually have very few false positives. And if you do have false positives, let us know. And you have some exceptions you want to configure out. There's quite a few ways you can configure those out, but I won't go through those quite just now. Once you've got that, the more interesting thing is when you get to the full scans, where you're actually going to attack your applications. We've got various options for this. We have a command line option, which works, but it's very simple and doesn't give you much flexibility. There's a Jenkins plugin, which I'll talk a little bit about, and there's another set of scripts, and then there's you can just start up Zap in daemon mode and have full control over it using the API. We are also working on something called Zap as a Service, or ZAS. Got nothing published yet, but we just need to spend a bit more time on it. But if anyone wants to get involved in developing that, we're always on the lookout for people to help out. So here's an example of the quick command line quick scan. You just say zap.sh or bat on Windows, minus command, minus quick URL. There's the target, and optionally minus quick progress, so it'll show you the little spinny thing to show how far it's got, and then it just dumps out the results to the command line by default. I think you can save them to a file, but that's it, and that's all I'm going to say about that. There's a Jenkins plugin. This is maintained by a third party, so it's not from the Zap core team. It requires a full Zap install. I don't think they can use Docker at the moment. They might have changed that recently. It does support authentication and supports scan policies, which is great. I don't think it's as flexible as driving the full API. I haven't got full control, but the developers of this are on the Zap developer group, and they've been pretty responsive. So if you have any problems, you can contact them that way. And so if you use Jenkins, this could be a good option. It's well worth having a look at this. And recently, a well-known travel company contributed the SDLC integration scripts, which are really great. So these are like another step up from the baseline scan, and I think you can configure the rules in a similar way with that configuration file. And so this supports spidering, passive scanning, and active scanning. It supports authentication, and they've got Jira integration in there as well. I think it's pretty much Linux only, but you might be able to hack the scripts around to work on Windows, and does require a bit of file editing, but it's well worth having a look at those. Now, before I get into the depths of the API, I'm going to mention some useful command line options. We have, so in Zap, we're currently using an HSQLDB database, and one thing, it has a recovery log, database recovery log, which if you're working with a desktop tool is actually really good in case your machine crashes or, God forbid, Zap crashes. You'll still be able to recover all your work, hopefully. With automated scans, that's probably less important. You know, if something goes horribly wrong with automation, you probably want to fix it to make sure it doesn't happen again, and you can just rerun things. So you probably don't need the recovery log, and if you turn it off, it runs faster. This is good. So there's a command line option, and the -config, basically Zap has a configuration file which is XML, and you can set any of those options. We just use a dot notation for the XML equivalent, and just -config, and then you can set anything you like that you can set via the UI. We have an option to update all of the add-ons, and this is pretty good because I mentioned Zap has a plugin architecture, so we have a lot of add-ons, and actually a lot of the core features of Zap are implemented as add-ons, and we do that so that we can update them at any time. We push out full releases 2, 3, 4 times a year, but we can push out updates to add-ons at any point. And all of the active and passive scan rules are implemented as add-ons, which means we can publish new ones at any time. So you can be scanning your application one week, and you make no changes to the application. You scan it next week, and if you keep the add-ons up to date, then we might find some vulnerabilities we didn't find before because we've improved our rules. And if you want to install a non-default add-on, particularly running, say, via Docker, you can just specify it for by -add-on install and then the add-on name. You can specify as many of those as you want. When you start Zap, we now force you to get an API key, and it gets generated for you, which is fine in desktop mode because you can just look at the Zap UI and see what it is. Not so good in automation because it's hard to get hold of. So what you want to do is you want to set the API key yourself to something suitably random, unless you're in a safe environment, in which case there's an option to disable it, but do make sure you're in a safe environment. Just have a swig of water. So, the rest of this talk is going to be talking about the Zap API, which is something which I probably don't talk enough about and haven't documented as well as maybe we could do. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the API. I'm going to talk about exploring, scanning, reporting, and then get on to authenticating and tuning. See how much time we've got. So the API is REST-ish. It only uses GET requests, which is actually quite useful, as you'll see in a minute. We have a standard format, which is there. And it does map very closely to the UI into the code. And because of that, it's actually very helpful to understand the Zap UI before delving into the API. There is a basic web UI. It's not very pretty, but it's functional. It's actually very useful, particularly for demos like this. And we have clients in a whole range of languages. The ones the core team support are Maintainer, Java and Python, but other people have contributed a lot of other APIs as clients as well. And those are all generated from the code. But if you need any other languages and want to help contribute, then just get in touch. And if you're playing around with the API, pro tip, use the desktop UI first. Then if you've got any complex configuration, particularly things like context and scan policies, then it's best to configure them in the UI. You can export those as files and you can import them via the API. It's much quicker than trying to work out all the API calls. So yeah, do that. Reproduce with the API UI if you want, and finally convert to a script. So, time for a demo. So what I'll do is I have Zap running, and I have the budget store, which is a deliberately vulnerable application I wrote ages ago. Some of you may have installed. Now, if I just select one of these pages, you will see that we're proxying through Zap. So what I'm actually using Foxy Proxy, but all you have to do is you have to configure your browser to proxy through Zap, and you should also import the Zap root CA. So we have a CA certificate in Zap, which gets generated for every user, and that means we can actually intercept TLS SSL configs, which is traffic, which is very useful. In this case, I'm just using HTTP rather than HTTPS. As you can see, I'm proxying via Zap. And in Zap, you haven't seen it before, we have the sites tree, so you can see the structure of your application here. You can see the different requests down here, and if you look, you can actually see the requests, the details of the request and response. Now, to explore an application, what you can do things like, actually, you know what I'm going to do now is, first of all, show you the Zap API, try and stick to the script. So this is the page. So if you just point your browser directly to the host and port that Zap is listening on, the first link is the local API. And so these are all the components, internal components within Zap which support the API. So one of the key ones is core. So have a look at that. And we have things called views. Views mean you just see things. We have actions which do things, and we have others which return data in a non-standard format, which I'll explain in a minute. If you have a look at the sites, then what you can do is you can choose your output format. So we support JSON, HTML, XML. JSON-P is disabled unless you choose to enable it, because it's kind of insecure. But if you just do that, sites, you can see we've got one site in there, which kind of actually maps to what you'll see with Zap. So we've got one site. And if you want to have a look at that in HTML, then you can see it like that. So actually, I'll go back to the JSON version. And what you can do, because we just support GET requests, you can actually copy that. And I've got this Docker command line, so I'm going to go curl and paste that URL in, and we get the site. So the API UI is a great way to try things out, and then if you want to drive them directly from another tool, if you haven't got the relevant client API, you can just drive the API directly, and you can work out whatever weird parameters you need. and we can go back and we can see, right, what else we got. We have the URLs, so we'll have a look at the URLs. So we've got found a few URLs, we can copy that. And there we've got the URLs. So this allows you to navigate your way around the API and try things out. And hopefully we're using kind of similar terms. So if anything to do with context, we're probably in the context thing, HTTP sessions, scripts, Selenium, Spider. The more you understand the UI, the better, the easier it will be to understand how to drive the API, hopefully. So I want to give a very quick introduction to the Python API. This is the API that I tend to use most of all. You can install it via a pip install, and in the script you want to import Zap v2 from Zap v2. Then there's two ways. These are both doing the same thing, the initializing Zap there. The first one is with the default parameters, but if you're not listening on the standard host or port, then you might want to change that. Because Bodget by default listens on 8080, I tend to run Zap on 8090, so I tend to use the second one. And we've got a zap.url open, allows you to open a target, and basically that requests the URL, proxies through Zap. It's always quite a good way to get started. So with automation, exploring is absolutely key. The better you explore your application, the more effective your active scanning will be. If you don't explore it very well, then that will seriously impact the vulnerabilities you can find. Various ways of exploring. The way I think is actually the best is if you have comprehensive regression or unit tests that use the browser or actually make use of network requests, because you can proxy those through Zap. So if you have the Selenium tests or anything else which make real requests to your service, then use those. Hopefully they will have, got a comprehensive set, then they will explain to Zap how you expect the application to be driven, and then Zap can use those and manipulate those requests and do some bad things. But it means you're much more likely to explore the full amount of the application. If you register a user through your application, hopefully your regression test will put in an email address, so you won't get an error coming back saying, or you might have failing cases, but you have some valid cases where you're using valid data, which means Zap can actually put in some valid data in some attacks. If you don't have those, or if they're not quite full enough, or you just want to do it anyway, you might want to use the spiders. So spiders are good ways to find things that your regression tests don't cover. And actually you can use these to find out the things that your regression tests don't cover, which can be useful. We have the traditional spider, as I mentioned before, just goes through the links, and we have the Ajax spider, which can launch browsers to click on everything. We also have an alpha add-on for supporting SOAP. So if you have a SOAP definition, it'll actually pick that up and populate that in the sites tree. And we have another alpha add-on for importing mod security 2 logs. So let's have a look at the spider. So what I'll do first of all is I'll go to Zap, and I'll just show you with the UI, right-click everywhere. There's so many options with Zap, we try not to overload people, and you actually see that there's loads more. We have lots more tabs here which you can do things. We try and just show you the most obvious, the ones you'll use all the time. But basically, yeah, definitely right-click everywhere. And here we've got an attack option and spider. And by default, you don't get to see the advanced tab, you just get the starting point. I haven't defined a context. Context in Zap terms are like applications, but they can be whatever you like, parts of applications. We haven't defined a context, we haven't defined any users, so we can't use those. By default, you probably want to recurse, but you might not. And by recurse, it means going through all the nodes underneath to find a starting point for the spider. We don't want to just spider the subtree, we're happy to break out of it, just on this site. And if you look at advanced options, we've got things like maximum children to crawl, maximum duration, things like that. So I'm going to kick that off, and you'll see happens very quickly. Down here, it shows you all of the URLs, and we get to see all of these new URLs in the sites tree. But that was just showing you how to do it from the UI. What I really wanted to do, is show you the API. So if we go to, the top level, we've got all the components. We have a spider component, and we go through all the views which we're not interested at this moment, we have an option to scan. And this has a URL. I better get this right, so I will paste this in. Not going to have a max children. Recurse, we do want to recurse. We're not going to specify a context. So max children, you notice, so a lot of these terms are basically the same as you see in the UI. We haven't got a full set of options, advanced options. If I make sure you can actually see Zap as well, then when I kick this off, you'll see the spider runs. Now you might have noticed we actually got this scan 1 back before the spider finished. So that is actually our scan ID. If I go back, what you'll see is one of the views we can see status. And the scan ID is not mandatory because by default we give you the last one, but you can specify it. But if I just click on that, you'll see status 100%. It was scan ID 1, so we can check particularly that one, and we can check ID 2 just out of interest, and we'll see that it doesn't exist. So it's very similar running the API, using the API to using the UI, but for anything that takes any length of time, you won't get you'll just get an ID which you can then use on other requests. And one thing, if you ever have a look, we can go down and see the results. So let's have a look at the results for scan 1, and we'll have it as XML, and there you go. We can see all of the URLs that we found in that spider. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and kick off the scan again, just for the hell of it, and you'll see why in a minute. So scan. Kick that off, and it's finished. And I'll copy that, and I'll go to the command line, and I will go curl, paste that in. And it's missing a parameter, yay. Because I forgot to put in quotes. Quote, Control V, quote. There we go. So you can use you can play around with the UI, then you can move to the HTML, the web version of the API. You can try it at that, and then you can copy and paste those URLs. So just using GET requests is actually quite useful for that. So if you want to do the same kind of thing using the Python API, the Python client, you can see we've got a zap.spider.scan your target. In this case, we're sleeping for 5 seconds, just to give it a chance to start. They'll probably finish in that time. And then what we're doing is we're looping around, polling the status, and waiting until it's got to 100%. Then we go, yay, it's finished. So very similar to what I was doing manually. For the Ajax spider, it's similar but not quite the same. The Ajax spider doesn't have a percentage. We can't get out of Selenium. It just kind of clicks on things and doesn't tell us how far we've got through. So with the Ajax spider, it just tells you whether it's running or it's stopped. So instead of polling for comparing with 100, we just say, is it still running? In which case, carry on. And I'm not going to demo this because I'll get loads of browser pop-ups. It'll be a pain. So passive scanning. Passive scanning happens all the time. You can't really turn it off. You probably don't want to. Hopefully you don't want to. But one thing you'll find is if you do a spider, a very big site, you might find that the passive scanning actually takes a while to catch up. So, and what you can do is we have a, you can poll to find out how far you've got. So let's see if I can show you that. So go back here and go to pscan. And we've got results to scan, and that'll tell us 0, which is not surprising. So I'll go in and zero. But now I'll just kick it off from here again. And 120, and done. So you can see that it's we're passively scanning in a separate thread, and we do that whether you're proxying or spidering or anything like that. We try and, so it doesn't slow things down, because it would slow you down when you're proxying. That means when you finish spidering, you might not finish passive scanning, you might want to wait until that's finished. For a site as small as Zap, you see it's pretty quick. If you've got a very large site, and we have some large sites in Mozilla, you will find that that can take quite a while. Not a huge amount of time compared with active scanning, but you know, it might be a minute or so. So if it's a big site, it's well worth waiting for the passive scanning to finish. Active scanning is similar to spidering, so we do get a progress, and it's very similar. So it's ascan.scan, and I'll show you this. So again, from the UI, we do attack active scan, and without the advanced options, you just give a starting point. Now, I'm not actually going to kick this off, but you can see we've got things like the policy, context, user. So, but what I want to do is go to the UI and show you the ascan. And under the actions, you will see we've got a couple of scan. We've got scan and scan as user. I'm just going to scan, and let's make sure I get the. I've got a whole load of these with different ports on, so it's worth getting the right one. And we do want to recurse, not in scope, no policy, no method, no post data. So there is Zap, and we kick off the scan, and there, see, and there the active scan is running. And what we can do now, this will take a bit longer, so we can go in and we can see, right, let's see the progress, and we can check, and it's 4%, now 5%, so we can just reload that, 8%, so you see it's tracking the UI, it's using the same data, obviously. So this is a very quick way to do that, and you'll find you can do some fun things, so you can have a look down here, and what was the, if you look here, you can actually see the scan ID, so that's scan ID 0, we can pause it, so we can go in and say pause 0, and that will then pause it, and we can go in and we can, if we want to resume it, we can resume. So this is one of the reasons why a lot of tools like building Zap in, because you've got full control. It's not quite as much control as you have by the UI, but we're kind of working on it. We want to be able to drive Zap in any way you want, and it not matter how you're doing it. We can also do things like we can stop the scan as well. So let's go scan, stop, 0, and stop, and you can see it stopped. So I see it's very similar to driving the spider. Now the reporting we can generate an HTML report or an XML report, and actually in the weekly version you can generate a markdown report as well. So just have a look, go here, and this, in this case, it's in the core. And what happens is the Zap API returns obviously data structures which get translated into whatever you specify, whether you specify JSON or HTML or XML. With the reports, they're generating HTML reports or XML reports, so they're not a standard format for a Zap API, which is why we count them as others, because they can return anything. So generate the HTML report, and there you go. So we've got the HTML report. You can see we've got a couple of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, got SQL injection. So you can get out the same report you can do via Zap. But one thing we'll find out, the reports are kind of, you know, they might not give you what you want. So what you can get hold of the actual alerts. So what we're doing here is we're getting hold of the alerts, and you might find you have a lot of alerts. So you can page through them. So if we go back to here. In the core, we can see the alerts, and I'm going to start at 0 and a count of 10. And that then gives me the first 10 alerts, which isn't too clear, so I'll give it as HTML. So that's the first 10, and then we'll start at 10, and we'll get the next 10. So you can page through them like that, and then you can do whatever you want with them. And that means that, you know, Our reports aren't the prettiest things in the world, and particularly if you want to integrate with your bug tracker or something, you'll want to pull those alerts back and do whatever you want with them. And of course, because you've kicked off Zap as a daemon, you will want to be able to shut it down, and you can do that via the API. So, any questions about the API?
Since you're using only GET requests, if you're having a very big command to give, don't you ever run out from available characters?
Yeah, it can happen. So we've got a pull request outstanding for supporting post requests as well. It doesn't have, it's only been reported recently. Most of the things, and particularly if you're doing something like loading a context, you can do that via the API from a file. So I think one person's had a problem with it, and we will sort that out.
And also, for the AJAX Spider, how do you get around with browser incompatibility? I mean, probably you support Firefox, so you support whatever the Firefox supports.
Well, let's have a look at the options. We have a look at the options and go to Selenium. We'll see we've got Chrome driver, IE driver, Phantom.js. So we support all of those, and HTML unit as well.
And this is used by the Spider?
Yeah, the Ajax Spider uses that, but we use it for DOM XSS scanning as well. So we kind of split the Selenium part separate so it can be used by other add-ons. Yeah. Right, so the question was, is there support for headless mode? If you notice there, there's support for Phantom.js. That's the headless one. And also, the one advantage of the Zap Docker images is we use virtual frame buffers. So we actually launch the real instances of Firefox, and I've tried Phantom.js, and it's not as effective as a real browser. So it is good to have the real browser.
So when you create a scan, you get the scan ID, which links that particular scan. How do you link a particular instance of proxying some tests to a particular scan, or do you just have to use the kind of latest version? So I have an endpoint. I know I've run my test against it. Can I assure that the scan I run is against that particular proxy, or is it just the latest version of what's been proxied through that site?
Yeah, it's if you want to do, you'd probably want to launch different instances of Zap to do a particular scan. So Zap is very much, it's still in a kind of single user desktop mode, really. I said Zap as a service will move away from that or wrap it, but at the moment, yeah, it's probably the latest version of those particular requests. But if you have a particular desire to make sure it's this particular set of your regression tests you're going to be scanning, just run those, just do the scan, start a new session, which you can do via the API. You don't have to bring Zap down if you don't want to. You might want to.
Perfect, thank you.
I've got more stuff to. Now the thing is, we've got to 5, so I'm out of time. But we had some problems at the beginning. So is people happy to carry on? Would anyone like me to carry on? No, no one's. Quite a few people want to carry on. Okay, I'm happy to carry on. If you want to get out, then feel free to leave. But I've got some more stuff to go through, and I'll try and get through it quickly. So what I was going to do now is authentication, because what we've done now is we're scanning an application with no authentication. And if your application has problems without any authentication, you've got real problems. It's usually we find that the more interesting things that the application can do tends to be when you're authenticated. And authentication is hard. Basic, simple forms we should be able to handle straightforwardly. We have authentication scripts. In theory, they can handle whatever you throw at it. I've actually managed to sort out a script for browser ID, which involves launching real browsers and doing all sorts of horrific stuff, but it's not easy. If you have complex single sign-on, you may well want to have an alternative in your development staging environment. You can, if it's really hard for your testing tools to test with your single sign-on system, maybe you shouldn't use it when you're testing. Sure, when you go live, great, but let's try and make it easy for ourselves. Don't make life difficult for yourself. Have another option. We do that in Mozilla. We have in staging, we have sort of special APIs that we can call from our scanning tools, which won't be available on live. We test they're not available on live as well. And pro tip: use the UI to set authentication up because it's much easier. And this is where I try and do it live. So as you'll see, I'm proxying through Zap, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to the budget store, and one thing we don't think I've actually, what you need to do is you need to register. I don't think I've registered a user yet, so I'll register test at test.com, test123, test123, register that. Great, I've registered. Now it's actually logged me in, which isn't what I want, so I'm going to log out and I'm going to log in again, and test.com, test123. So I've manually logged in there. Now if we go to Zap, we will see that under the history, we can actually see the login request. We can see the request, test.com, and the password. Now, in order to do interesting things with anything, we typically want to add them to a context. We want to tell Zap that this is something we're interested in. So I'm going to include it in a new context, which is there. And you'll see we've got this budget context, and everything's got a target application on. This is something we want to attack. Now, if I right-click this request, we will see I can flag as context budget form-based authentication login request. And it's a bit small here, but if I make that bigger, you'll see we've picked up that there is post data. We've picked a couple of random parameters. We've got the wrong one, so I'll change the username. And at one stage, we actually picked up the user by default, and for some reason that's broken, so I need to put that in. So I'm going to put in a test user, which is test at test.com, and test123. And I'm not sure I've got that right, so I'll try it again. I'll add that. So I've now told Zap how to authenticate, but it doesn't know when to authenticate. So we have a look at one of these responses. We go down here, guest user. Let's have a look at an authenticated one. It shouldn't matter as long as you've got the, so we've got here this password, a link to your password. That's an indication that we're logged in. So I'm going to right click that, and I'm going to flag as context budget authentication logged in indicator. So now I've told Zap how to authenticate, the user to authenticate with, and how to tell if we need to authenticate. And as you see, you can have as many users as you want. So if you've got a load of different test users, particularly if they can do different things, you want to do that. So what you're seeing now is they've got an icon up here which says forced user mode. It's disabled. But that button is not enabled if you haven't given us enough information. Go back here. I'm going to log out. And as you see, I'm click around here. I'm logged out. I'm now going to click on the forced user mode. And if I click somewhere now, you'll see I'm logged in. So in forced user mode, Zap knows, okay, have a look. Is it logged in based on the indicators, logged out or logged in? And if it's not, then specify that use the form. And if you can't use form-based, if it's more complicated, you write a script, you can use script-based as well. So that's kind of nice. And what we'll find is if we right-click here, we now have options when we active scan and spider. We can specify the context and we can specify the user. So we can actually say which user to scan as. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to export this because it's much easier to do it this way. So I'm going to export and I'm going to overwrite. I'm going to save that file. And now I'm going to delete the session. So I'm going to start a new session and I've got nothing there. And if I look here, you'll see, right, budget's there, we've got no context, we don't know anything about it. And I will now go to the API, and we have a special context option, and I'm going to say, right, we want to import the context, and the file is budget.context. We've got a standard default place. Going to import it, and you'll see we now have the imported context, and we should have all of the authentication information set up. And what I'm going to now do is I will just start scanning from here. active scan, and I will scan as a user. I could do this via the API, but it's a bit quicker this way. And I'll cancel that. I don't know what's done that. Will we now pick any one of these things? Let's find something which does return a response, and we can now see that we are doing the authenticated scan as a particular user. So this shows you if you want to do authenticated scans automated, the best way, set them up by the API, save your context which has all the authentication information, and then you can load that from the API. I'll go through these very quickly. One of the things you'll find, automated scanning can take a long time. We've got loads of options for tuning, whether it's spider time limits, telling Zap when things are data-driven, and a lot of options around the active scan rules. We've got a lot of tuning as well, and we've got the stats. So if you actually have a look at this option here, you will see, you can actually see how long each of these took, and those got killed. But and you can get access to all that information from the API as well, which means you can actually see how long things took. And we also have Authentication Stats, which is an alpha add-on. But one thing I found, I was doing what I thought was authenticated scans, and I'm a suspicious kind of person. I wanted proof that it really was authenticating and doing what I was expecting. So it'll actually tell you how many of your requests have the logged in indicator, the logged out indicator, have both indicators, because that's not a good sign. Don't have either. So you get a whole load of stats which should be able to tell you, whether these things are working. We've also got stats D support. And when it comes to accuracy, we're very configurable as well. I haven't got time to go into details, but rule configuration, you can actually tune some of the rules very finely. So things like you can say which forms don't need anti-CSRF tokens. And the fun thing is you can specify that. That's stored in the Zap config file, which means you can specify them using the -config on the command line, which means you can put those in the baseline scan because we can support the Zap config files. If you need any help, we've got a Getting Started guide. There is a desktop help. If you go, it's amazing how many people don't. We've got an invisible online menu option. Nobody sees this. I don't know why. It'll take you to the Zap homepage and user group, the developer group, facts. We've got loads of stuff there. And we've got, I'm on IRC, quite a few of the Zap core team are on irc.mozilla.org, websec tools, usually European hours are best. That's okay for you guys. So quick summary of this workshop. I've shown you the baseline scan, which gives you a very quick security overview of your individual applications. Got the mass baseline, which can wrap that and can give you a dashboard. But if you want to go further than that, you want to start on doing full Zap scans, and to really find fun vulnerabilities, you want to do authenticated scans. And if you need help, just ask on via one of those options, because we try and help out everyone as much as possible. So now, go forth and automate Zap. Thank you very much. And if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to stick around or wander off and enjoy. Oh, and I've got some, as you stay to the end, I've got some Zap stickers. So if you want Zap stickers, come to the front.